Thank you. And thanks so much to Tim for everything. It's been so wonderful to work with you and everyone here, and great to be in DC. So thanks to my friend Adam so much. He's been a wonderful host. He's kind of made a lot of this possible as well for me to come here so many times during this exhibition's run. So yeah, I'm gonna show, it's a kind of small screen, so feel free to move around, move up so you can see stuff. I'll talk about it. I'm gonna first go through some images here to contextualize the work, and then we'll kind of do a little walkthrough. I like to start my talks with this quote. It's by a media theorist named William Flusser, who he was a really brilliant philosopher who basically predicted Instagram in like 1979. Who really thought that like we were at a point where images were going to become our primary mode of communication in lieu of linear language. Having disintegrated into particles, all recognizable orientation points having become abstract, the world is now to be gathered together, so we may again experience it, recognize it, and live in it. That is what envisioners do. Yet the particles that need gathering are neither visible, nor graspable, nor comprehensible. They can only be grasped with the help of instruments capable of reaching into the mass of particles. So kind of thinking about like the camera and recording and sensing and how we're able to see beyond what we can perceive in those ways. And that's a lot what I try to do in my work, is try to make the invisible visible in some way, right? And therefore hopefully understandable in some way. I grew up, or at least a lot of my youth was spent near a place called Fermilab, which is near Chicago, Illinois. Up until about, I guess, 13 years ago now, they had until CERN opened, their Large Hadron Collider, they had the largest particle accelerator that was recreating the moment after the Big Bang continuously to understand the universe in different ways. So this is the loops there. It's kind of small images, so I apologize. Just kind of my background, I'm kind of interested in science. Also, this term, the Anthropocene. Who's heard this term before? Okay, yeah. So the Anthropocene, this is something I've been heavily involved in for a very long time. I've worked with the Anthropocene Working Group, which is a group of geologists who have decided that the epoch, the time period we're in, is no longer the Holocene, it's the Anthropocene. And that's because essentially humans have acted like an ice age. We've had such a massive impact on the Earth that they want to change the name of the epoch, of the time period. This actually was rejected last year, so it's not actually officially happening. So it's a hypothesis at this point, but it still makes a lot of sense. The origin point of this epoch, the Anthropocene, is under debate, but around 1950, the Great Acceleration was happening, where you see just like all these charts, and they're kind of small, but acceleration in sort of everything that you can imagine. Energy use for direct investment, fertilizer consumption, etc. You can kind of see it from 1950 onwards. Also, nuclear testing and nuclear bombs are kind of the origin point that kind of defines the Anthropocene in many ways, because that was something, all the nuclear testing actually changed background radiation levels on the planet, right? So after all the nuclear tests in 1963, they had the highest levels of background radiation ever recorded. From nuclear testing, yeah. And so early on in my research, this is like 13 years ago, I started to research these nuclear reactions. And the first controlled nuclear reaction that ever occurred was at University of Chicago in 1942, and which was insane because they did it in a major city, which obviously is not a very good idea, but it's a longer story. The workers were on strike at the laboratory. This is the beginning of the Manhattan Project, where there's kind of this race to create nuclear weapons. I started to think about what can we perceive from this nuclear testing, like what still remains from it, right? And I started to think about what actually can we see with our eyes, and this line right here is what's actually the visible part of the spectrum we can see. So there's obviously a lot we cannot perceive at all, right, most things. As I started to get further in my research, I realized that the world's first nuclear reactor was buried in a forest preserve near Chicago, a place called Site A. And it's a place that looks kind of like this now. It's just a field with a bike path through it. There's a little marker that denotes it. I started to research the Manhattan Project, right? The largest secretive operation really in the world to create the first atomic bombs, and started to think about how the workers there were monitoring their exposure to radiation. And I realized that the workers were using badges of photographic film that they would every 2 weeks develop, and then with the film, if they could read the newspaper through the film, they could see text, they were okay. But if it was too fogged to see, they were deemed not okay. And it's very unclear what happens. There's no procedure following the not okay. So it was very interesting and troubling, but exciting in a way, because I started to realize that there was a way to record this invisible radiation that still remained in the ground. I was thinking a lot about Karen Barad at the time, who wrote this amazing book called Meeting the Universe Halfway, thinking about the nature of the observed phenomena, changes with corresponding changes in the apparatus, thinking about obviously like complementarity and Niels Bohr and all these kinds of things. So I apologize, it's a little sciencey at this part of the talk, but it won't be this way the whole time. So these reproductions aren't amazing on the screen, but I started to bury film for 2 weeks at a time. The film was never exposed to any visible light whatsoever. I would just fit the rolls of medium format film buried in the ground in a plastic bag, develop them, and images like this appeared. All these images that were kind of the evidence of radiation colliding with the film, right? So a way of using the site, of documenting. So I started to call this site-specific documentary modes of photography, right? So kind of like altering the way I record something based on what I want to actually do. And I've done many iterations of this that have had many different kinds of results and been displayed in many different ways. And I bring this project up because the stuff I'm talking about in this show, I feel like is very, these are also semi-secretive operations happening that will have massive world impact if they're implemented. And I feel less and less like a conspiracy theorist as I meet people who can talk to me about these issues and understand them, but we're talking about big projects in the Anthropocene that are going to impact the world in pretty unpredictable and major ways, right? And this is also just kind of gives you a little background on my work. These are some installations I did in Stuttgart, Germany earlier this year, where the radiated film was made into these large banners hanging down, and there were images. So moving on, the other kind of background project I want to talk about just quickly is a project called Slow Pause. I won't read through all this, but this is Bruno Latour, Down to Earth, talking about how we need to sort of think about what kind of Earth we want to live in, and how globalization, it's just not a actual way we can live and have the planet exist. What I was thinking about, and kind of some of the origins of this exhibition, were kind of happened during COVID, a time I'm sure we all aren't necessarily excited to remember, but during COVID, the Earth vibrated less during lockdown, right? So the really kind of takeaway from this is like our movement matters, right? Because people weren't driving and flying and moving around or even working outside of their house a lot of the time, they recorded that the Earth in general, you can see all these stopped vibrating as much, right? So kind of thinking about our place on the planet and what that means, and how our movement really does matter. At the time I made these kind of like amateur seismograph machines and was recording vibrations, and started making photographs. This is a show at Eli University in 2022 of this film that was kind of a record of the seismic motion of the Earth. And then embedded on top of these images are car tires, right? So in a lot of these issues, I'm trying to figure out and think about what's at the core of these issues. Like, why are we in this spot? Why is the planet acting like this? Why are we at a point where we're heating up? And it's like at the core of the issue, I fully believe, is really automobiles, airplanes, movement, right? If you had to really distill it to like, why are we here? And it's like, there's a lot of issues that have been caused because of this, the way that we move throughout the world, the way that we drive around the world, the way we fly, etc. Not in a finger-pointing way. I did fly here today, another thing we were talking about here in coral bleaching, which you all probably know a fair amount about. As corals get too hot, they start to bleach. We've lost a lot of them over the years. A larger issue, and if you are if you think about why this is happening, I thought embedding them in a tire would be really interesting as well. Like, what's at the actual core of these kinds of things? So it's a little more background. And now kind of getting to where we're at with this show. This show began with another exhibition because it was called Because the Sky Will Be Filled with Sulfur. My friend, I was trying to find a title for this previous iteration, and my friend and mentor was like, why would you want to? I was trying to find a title. She's like, why are you making the work? And I'm like, because the sky will be filled with sulfur, and that's how we got there. Let me refer to my notes for this next portion here. So this project of solar radiation management, we're going to get into more, it really started in a certain way in 1815. 1815 was the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. It was the largest volcanic eruption in history. It killed thousands of people, and it caused what they call the year without a summer. And the year without a summer, they cooled things on the Earth by over 1 degree Fahrenheit by the significant amount of volcanic ash and gases that were released in the atmosphere that hung out in the stratosphere and cooled the Earth in unusual ways. They described it as a dry fog that dimmed the sunlight. Crops failed in many regions in New England, leading to food shortages. It snowed in Virginia in July. All things sort of happened, right? And this is sort of the evidence that they have used, they meaning different actors in scientific institutions or universities, to think about this thing called solar radiation management. These are paintings from around the same time. Turner painting, you can see what the sky looks like in these paintings. We don't have photographs. That's before the photographs were actually possible. You can kind of see these kind of eerie settings of the sky that has these kind of yellowish, orangish clouds in it. This brings me to geoengineering, which is sort of at the foundation of all this work. The idea is behind sulfur skies, behind solar radiation management, is that in order to cool the Earth, they want to fly airplanes around the Earth, emitting a sulfur-like substance in the stratosphere that would then spread around the Earth and form like a dimming shield, right? This is the only method they know of that can cool the Earth instantly. So they could do it today, and it would cool the Earth in some fashion. There are a lot of, and these are other geoengineering methods that I'm showing in these slides here. There are other methods, but these are the ones they know will actually do something. And some of the trade-offs would be that they don't know all of them, obviously. It hasn't really been tested in an open atmosphere officially. But some of the trade-offs would be that the sky would probably not be blue anymore, and you wouldn't be able to see the stars as well at night, if at all. There are tons of other things that would most likely happen, but these are the things that they think would. My new friend here just sent me this text the other day. I have to call you out, but I really appreciate it. At the opening, we talked about this, and this is a plan it's further along than I had actually even thought. This is a plan for the aircraft to deploy these things. It's conceptual at this point. It's not in motion, but here's some of the stuff from those plans, and that they're actually thinking about doing this. So that's the basis for about half the work, and we're gonna, after I get through this next portion, we'll walk around and talk about the stuff as well. The other thing that I'm talking about here, again, these big world-changing projects that would alter the way that we interact on the Earth in a sort of Manhattan Project kind of way, like a massive, secretive way, is de-extinction. Have you guys heard about this at all? Anybody other than friends I've made listen to me talk about it? So de-extinction is something that's actually happening. 3 or 4 of these pieces are about it. There's a laboratory in Dallas called Colossal. Their webpage is very sexy and like over-designed, and they very much think the solution to extinction is de-extinction, and that means bringing back extinct species. They have all these crazy graphics about the different stats they're using to think about this. They are in the process of working on bringing back the woolly mammoth as one of the things. They're using CRISPR technology and DNA to merge the DNA of the woolly mammoth with an Asian elephant and with the idea that that would eventually, through breeding more and more, would eventually create a woolly mammoth-like thing. But it's maybe the scariest one to me because it's like, have we not seen Jurassic Park? And they're also, the same lab is working on the thylacine, which is the Tasmanian tiger. Also extinct, more recently extinct, kind of hunted to extinction because they were a danger to crops in Australia. But they have all these crazy slogans. We have the DNA, we're well on the path to de-extinction. And this company claims to already have one de-extinct species, the dire wolf. And they have videos on their webpage of the dire wolf in a secret location somewhere in Texas. And then the last one, and the one that I think probably has gotten the most attention, is the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon was at one time the most abundant bird in the entire world. When they'd fly over, the whole sky would go dark. Tim was just telling me a story about how they would catch them by putting nets in trees and get tons of them at once, and then the tree would sort of fall and they would be able to so people would hunt them for food. But we somehow killed all, it would be like exterminating rats. We killed all of them. They're all gone. The last one died in a zoo in Cincinnati in the early 1900s. His name was Martha. A different company, Revive and Restore, who has the same basic thing going on. They have been working on this for quite some time of breeding the passenger pigeon with rock pigeons, the DNA from the passenger pigeon, to kind of bring it back. And for me, it's like, why exactly are we doing this? And what does it mean to bring back these species on many different levels, but to a planet that seems like it's going to have to alter in a major way just to become survivable as is? A lot of what I'm trying to do with all this work is create a speculative aesthetic for the future, right? Like, I think it's important for people to understand that if human behavior continues in this way, that the world's going to have to look different one way or another, right? So thinking about that impact aesthetically, I think is really an important thing to me to understand. They are going through airplane seats that are cut away, I think, for kind of obvious reasons. One, as far as like, again, the impact, but also kind of how it would be deployed through airplanes. And there are casts of what should be bleached coral on top of them, again, talking about the impact of the oceans and humans. This trio right here is another de-extinction piece about the passenger pigeon. Right? So there's these kind of sculpted forms meant to emulate a kind of in-between passenger pigeon that's kind of in progress of becoming something. And these are on lab stands, so meant to kind of talk about scientific research and sort of the investigation and experimentation of that. The branches you're seeing are made of fireproof foam. I thought that if we're bringing back this species, they should have fireproof trees. So I'm trying, this is like, as I talk about this work, I'm like, God, I'm such a downer all the time. So I am trying, I hope there's some fun things in the show, even it's not the funnest topic, but I'm hoping aesthetically there's some stuff that's captivating in that way, where even if it's pretty serious, you can kind of maybe have a little laugh or something. The middle piece in there is called a personal, our passenger service unit, and that you probably recognize from what's above you on an airplane. That's the air conditioning vent and the light and things like that that's right above you when you're flying, especially in planes that are slightly, actually my flight here had the identical one, which was kind of funny. Yeah, so that's that piece. This piece, these are all kind of new works for me too. I took this opportunity to make all new work for this show and to really kind of push these kind of things I've been playing with for a little while. This is a piece called De-extinction Woolly Mammoth, right? And all of these kind of assemblage pieces are really using kind of parts of something or kind of playing with the idea of why something was extinct in the first place and what they're trying to do to bring it back, right? So within this, we have obviously airplane cushions, which are very present in this exhibition, thinking about our impact on the Earth as we fly through it, right? And the impact of movement and all those kinds of things and what led to these kind of destruction of these species in general. There's a participation trophy in a couple of these, which I think is kind of fun, thinking again about like the reasoning behind why we're doing this, right? Why are we doing this? Why would we bring these species back? Asphalt is embedded in this piece and many others. Asphalt, I think, being this material of of our time. If there is a material of the Anthropocene, I think it's asphalt, in my opinion. It's something that's made from petroleum waste that causes more waste. Embedded in this also is woolly mammoth hair that was found in permafrost, and a woolly mammoth rib fossil. So kind of using these pieces of something to kind of think about the experimental nature of bringing something back, but also the detrimental impacts. There's also a mirror embedded in this to kind of reflect on that as well. You'll see in many of these this image right here, an image like this right here, I should say. And what they are, there's one on all three of those back there as well. The NOAA, the Weather Climate Organization, they recently decommissioned 2 of their satellites, NOAA 15 and NOAA 19. And these are the last distributed images from those weather satellites, right? So without these satellites, our ability to, they were kind of old anyways, but our ability to sense weather patterns and understand climate has lessened. And due to budget cuts and things like that, we're seeing a lot of things kind of fall off in this way. And you can see how weather already is becoming less predictable, right? And these were kind of like late adds to this project as this all kind of came down. Ironically, NOAA 15 on August 13th, 3 days ago, it was still up in the air, even though it wasn't sending out data, but it had a battery failure and finally has been actually grounded entirely, right? So kind of thinking about that. There are many different elements in here. There's bleached coral underneath this kind of shield here. A lot of what they talk about with solar geoengineering too is crop failure. So there's an albedo, surface albedo, so there's this silver corn. These images and the background image here, which is under this kind of rubbery yellow meant to emulate the sulfur-filled sky, are images from Yerkes Observatory. And Yerkes Observatory, I had a residency there earlier this summer. I've done work there in the past. It was the first laboratory for astrophysics research in the world. Einstein was there, many scientists worked there. This is at the turn of the century. So thinking about seeing and what they could perceive and what we learned from that perception, and thinking about how, as the world sort of shifts, and if we kind of do these large planetary transformations, what we're going to be able to actually perceive. This is a companion to the woolly mammoth. This is the Tasmanian tiger piece. Similar in a lot of ways, although there's air conditioning vents that are present in a lot of the work, and they're present here as well. Thinking about the energy of air conditioning, but also how kind of a lot of proposals to engineer the planet involve cooling in one way or another, and the sort of impossibility of that task of solving things through AC in a way. On here embedded are a cast of Tasmanian tiger jaws, right? So kind of thinking about these parts that you could use to make to create a new Tasmanian tiger in some capacity. This is video footage from Yerkes Observatory, just kind of still footage spliced together. It's a really pretty interesting place, but kind of just thinking of getting about observation. It's a really beautiful, amazing place. The telescope is gigantic, and to raise and lower it, the floor moves. So it's like a gymnasium-sized building, and you just move up and down the floor, and then the telescope is moved that way. It's very, very cool. So it's kind of on this monitor on purpose to think about surveillance and ways of seeing and understanding. Embedded on these are weather balloons, right? These 3 structures here. A lot of people had really interesting guesses. Someone said they thought it was a straitjacket at the opening. And again, we have these images from NOAA 15 and 19, and a yellowish sky over these Yerkes Observatory star pictures. And the weather balloons talking about how the funding cuts, and this is one that's pretty major and kind of silly. They are not doing many weather balloon launches anymore, right? And that's making it a lot harder for us to understand the weather and what's happening. So kind of talking about that issue that's occurring as well. Embedded on this are also meteorites, thinking about different ways we gain information and understand the world. And lastly, this work has, these are actual pictures of Mars made by Yerkes. Embedded on here are asphalt and bleached coral and this commemorative Concord $2 bill that was printed as actual currency at one time. And thinking about priorities and what we kind of understand as being of victory, of knowledge, of progress, etc. This is another NOAA image right here. And this is a map, the first photograph ever made showing the division between the troposphere and the stratosphere, right? So kind of think about the stratosphere and understanding that and how that plays into a lot of this work here. Well, thanks so much for coming out. Stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. I really appreciate you all taking the time, and yeah, thanks.